Let us stand for our invocation.
Beloved mighty I am presence, O I am that I am, the one true God, Elohim. Come forth now in the victory of the God flame, expand within our hearts. Let thy sacred fire consume the cause and core of all opposition to Church universal and triumphant, to individual reunion with God. Let each one who is a part of this community and all light bearers of a cosmos be reinforced now by this our call for the tube of light, for the violet flame within, for the cylinder of blue flame, for the mighty action of the sacred fire. O God, let thy light intensify to cast out now fear and doubt, human questioning and records of death that remain as the dregs of the age of Pisces and the conclusion of this 25,800-year cycle. Mighty I am presence, I call forth the sacred fire, even the Maxine light that is the flame of the Ark of the Covenant, to blaze forth and consume all that the great law will allow of that descending karma of this cycle of April 23rd. Mighty I am presence, speak to us in this hour, reconnect our souls to the Holy Christ Self. Lord Gautama Buddha, Maitreya, Jesus Christ. Lord Gautama Buddha, Sanat Kumara, place your electronic presence over us. And now seal that karma that stands between the soul and the Holy Christ Self as the great law will allow. I call for the overcoming of spiritual blindness and out of alignment states by the conditions of the world that the devotees of the sacred fire now feel. I call for the healing of every chela of the light and of beloved El Moria. Let thy will be done, O God. Succor thine own and lead them in paths of righteousness. O thou mighty shepherd, come forth. And let the sword Excalibur cleave asunder the real from the unreal in each one. Give all the vision and the strength and the love and the heart to choose the real from the unreal, O God. Even if reality be more difficult in this hour than unreality. O God, I pray for the intercession of the cosmic Christ. And I seal this call in the heart of Lord Krishna, Maitreya Jesus Gautama, Sanat Kumara. Through the open door of Padma Sambhava, through the heart of Lanello and Moria, we consecrate this session at the Royal Teton Retreat to the heart of Lord Lanto and Confucius.
Good afternoon, everyone. Won't you be seated? I would like to explain to you the principle of light bringing out the darkness. Just as when you fast, you are expelling from the body that substance that has remained sealed, so when we call forth the light, that light as golden illumination's flame descending, intensifying in the brain, is going to begin to flush out the densities, even physical impurities that have lodged there. And if you do not understand the process that is taking place, the alchemy of transformation of the individual, you may latch on to the densities and latch on to what is called ignorant animal magnetism, that which clogs the mental body and the brain. This is why we have Summit University. It is even why we have a 12-day conference, so that we can do some inner temple work. We can go to the heart of Maitreya's mystery school And we can know that there is a process, that enlightenment does not come by the touching of the crown, by a guru, or an Elohim, or an archangel. The touching of the crown is the beginning of the process of initiation, and those who have been called, such as the prophets, the Christs, and the Buddhas of all ages, as they have entered the path, they have had to deal with the antithesis to every ray of light, every increase of light that they desire to carry. We have been taught any number of times that when we call for more light, we can only receive that which we are able to carry in harmony. Light will always stir up that which is in our worlds until we become all light and are in perfect harmony with the light descending. So when people do not understand this and they don't have a true perception of the realities of what the path of the Great White Brotherhood is, when they are just in the very midst of the initiation, having left one shore and going to the other, they find themselves crossing that river of life, crossing that sea, and they think something must be wrong. The teacher must be wrong, the teaching must be wrong, or they have failed, or the light has failed. They do not understand that there is a course to be followed, and that to undo what has been done for many, many thousands of years, we may pass through this bitter sea of karma, some hardship, some challenges, and some tests. But when we expect them, and we know that this is a preordained course that must be gone through, just like passing through an illness when there is a crisis in the body and we come through, then we do not see it as hardship or sorrow, but we see it and know it as a path ordained. And even though the karma that returns to us was not God's will in the first place, it was our free will expressed. When it comes back, it is God's will that it return to us, because it is God's will that we return to Him, and we cannot return to Him without experiencing these conditions. So if we will remember that when we are having our tests, we will pass them so much better and in joy and in the glory of the Lord, no matter what the burden or the yoke is that the world or the powers that be would put on us. We see it as a passageway, and that to gain the right of passage, we must deal with it in the mode of challenging. Since Lord Lanto is the sponsor of this course, I would like to ask you to give fervent calls to him to expose to you that which the golden illumination flame will bring out as the dross, as the gold is refined and as we are being refined, so that we can see it for what it is and not get all tangled up, blaming ourselves, blaming others, blaming God, blaming the Brotherhood, the messenger, life itself, or anything under the sun for our poor, pitiful state that we find ourselves in. I have always found that the transmutation and the victory in this situation comes very quickly if we allow ourselves to be fluid, if we allow ourselves to be grateful, if we allow ourselves to be merciful toward ourselves and everyone else, and simply let go of the old moorings. We can't hang on to everything of the past and expect alchemical change or the future to appear. And so there has to be a letting go. For every gift and grace and advancement that we seek from God, we must leave something behind. The love of this world is enmity with Christ. The love of Christ is enmity with the world. That is the basic message of Jesus and Paul and the apostles. And we must know that only so much can fit into this little sack that we call our body and the home where we live in this octave in these four lower bodies. We cannot contain the old waters and the new waters in the same wineskin. So I think that you should know that I am speaking these things because I'm continually speaking to chelas and counseling them. And I know that this is at the root of the problem. We want God to fulfill our desires, very necessary needs that people have in life. But we want to keep the old self while God gives to us the fulfillment of our wishes, and yet we want the benefits of the light and Chilaship and the path also. And I think that this in itself can be a problem of the sign of Cancer, which we are in since summer solstice. The 4th of July always takes place in this sun sign. And Cancer is the line of the home, it's the line of Sanat Kumara and the Divine Mother, but it's the line of the grasping, possessive nature, and that's why its symbol is the crab. And so we tend to cling to everything, not understanding that every day we are intended to self-empty and to be filled. People cling to their sense of injustice, their sense for the need for the resolution of human conditions when human conditions are not resolvable. We find resolutions because we rise from the human condition and enter into a higher vibration and a higher life where all perspectives change. Just as when you climb a mountain, the earth looks so very much different with each step that you take. You have a new and more grand perspective. So I pray that we look at our 6 o'clock line, realize that it is the entrance to the astral plane for the year. These 3 months are in the astral quadrant, the emotional body. The emotions of the earth are in turbulence. The karma of this sign comes upon us. It is truly a wondrous moment to realize that the 6 o'clock line is also the line of the base chakra and the sacred fire of the mother, which connects with the crystal cord of the river of life flowing from our presence. That the light of the Divine Mother and her energy in the matter cosmos alone, let alone the spirit cosmos, is absolutely unlimited. You can grasp the sense of the power of the Mother and the unlimited energy she can give to us when we surrender to her by just looking at the vast ocean and thinking of the amount of power that is in that body of water, or the power of the earth element, or fire, or nuclear energy, or what the air and the wind can do in wreaking destruction, or in keeping a planet in balance. All of these forces are yours. Therefore, we do not need to cling to our paltry portion that is our lot in this life, but realize that as we are in the flow with the sacred fire of the Divine Mother, all is replenished, and as we give, what returns to us is not the same as we gave, but an increase, a multiplication thereof. I think that this is one of the roots of the problems that we see in coming to grips with life today, getting stuck on the Cancer line of wanting to retain the old and wanting the new, and being almost as spoiled children in making that demand when life cannot fulfill it, or wanting to be in a negative state and yet wanting God to deliver us from that state. This is a conversation I had with a Chela today, who has been in a negative state for some time and continually revolving and recriminating what he feels is a bad situation and a bad circumstance. And he wants God to heal him and me to pray for him. But you see, I explained to him that God respects free will, and the fact that he is in this gall of bitterness is his free will, and only his free will can change that, and only he can walk out of that situation. But he remains in the gall of bitterness, waiting for God to save him. So you see, God has saved us by giving to us free will, unlimited spiritual resources in the Father, unlimited matter resources in the Mother, every access to every cosmic being. All we need to do is to keep the law and follow the law, seek the kingdom of God, his consciousness and his righteousness, the right use of the law, and all these things that we feel we are lacking and we must go out and get for ourselves will come to us. But they never come to us when there is a flawed consciousness, and in the case of Cancer, it is usually indecision, self-pity, self-justification. And because one feels justified, one can make almost any move or make any decision, when in reality, It is the God harmony that is the flame of that line that will make us one, so that we merge with the Christ self and merge with the presence. And from that point of attunement, we make our decisions, because we know that every act, as Moria says, has its consequences, and we will have to deal with them sooner or later. So I ask you to pray for your attunement with God, your oneness with the great presence of love that is with us here and always and everywhere, and stand to make your calls to Lanto, and then we will sing our song to him, number 211. Together. Let us begin.
We are
Thank you. Let us take our great central sun ritual. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and the Divine Mother. Amen. Great central sun ritual, O cosmic Christ, thou light of the world. O cosmic Christ, thou light of the world, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. O cosmic Christ, thou light of the world, thou art life, and thy life is the light of my being. Therefore I am the true witness of thy light, for thou art the true light, which lighteth every manifestation of the Father, Mother God, that cometh into the world. Thou art the Word who was made flesh, and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth, in the Son, Jesus Christ. I am beholding the glory of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, who is also with me in my beloved holy Christ self. O mighty presence of God, I am in and behind the sun. I welcome thy light which floods all the earth, into my life, into my mind, into my spirit, into my soul. Radiate and blaze forth thy light. Break the bonds of darkness and superstition. Charge me with the great clearness of thy white fire radiance. I am thy child, and each day I shall become more of thy manifestation. I am that I am. I am the light of the world. 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 O thou cosmic Christ, thou the empowerment of my sonship through Jesus Christ. I am born again, not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but I am born of God. For my Lord hath said to me, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? And I have said to him, Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. Make all light bearers of this world and cosmos one, in the spirit of the great white brotherhood. We are one in thy mystical body of the cosmic Christ. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world.
He
Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta. Let the light flow into my being. Let the light expand in the center of my heart. Let the light expand in the center of the earth. And let the earth be transformed into the new day. Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta. Let the light flow into my being. Let the light expand in the center of my heart. Let the light expand in the center of the earth. And let the earth be transformed into the new day. Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta. Let the light flow into my being. Let the light expand in the center of my heart. Let the light expand in the center of the earth. And let the earth be transformed into the new day. Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta. Let the light flow into my being. Let the light expand in the center of my heart. Let the light expand in the center of the earth. And let the earth be transformed into the new day. Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta. Let the light flow into my being. Let the light expand in the center of my heart. Let the light expand in the center of the earth. And let the earth be transformed into the new day. Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta, Helios and Vesta. Let the light flow into my being. Let the light expand in the center of my heart. Let the light expand in the center of the earth. And let the earth be transformed into the new day. In the name and in the footsteps of Jesus Christ, I am a son of God. I am come a light unto the world, that whosoever believeth on the cosmic Christ should not abide in darkness, but should have the light of life. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. We are the light of the world. Our ashram that is set on the hill of the Lord Moria El cannot be hid. As I wrote in the introduction to Book 2 of the 1984 Pearls of Wisdom, this teaching which El Moria gave to me, so I would bring it to your attention at this moment. Up until some 12,000 years ago, Jesus had had previous incarnations on the continents of Lemuria and Atlantis. In one embodiment, he ruled Atlantis during an age of great enlightenment, when more than 50% of the population were fully clothed in their Christhood. Since Philos is taking us to a period on Atlantis prior to its sinking, prior to the Noachian flood or deluge, I was interested to know how long before that period Jesus had been the ruler or emperor. Jesus was the hierarch many, many thousands of years before the events that are described in this book took place. You can see that at the time of these events, there is an admixture of planes of consciousness on Atlantis. Technology is high, but there are compromisers, there are materialists, there are those that are simply the type of people almost that you'd expect to find in the world today, except they are served by a superior science. So this gives us some measure and some sense of how long it took that level of a Golden Age civilization at its height, it surely must have been at its height when so many of the people, more than half, were fully clothed in their Holy Christ selves. This is an amazing period to contemplate and to meditate upon and to search for clues as to our own association with it. And then to ask ourselves the question, how many of those were able to reach that which was required in that hour, which was 100% balancing of their karma? And for the Christhood to come into the temple, one does not have to have reached that level. The Christ can be in one's temple when one is beyond the 51%. And so, how many of them reached the 100% and became ascended masters and maybe cosmic beings today? And how many did not? How many of them may have lost that Christhood or determined to stay in the earth as teachers to return again and again until this age, the end of that 25,800 year cycle? As we read yesterday of the role of the emperor on Atlantis and the two types of education, we see in the writings of Plato similar teaching, and I would like to bring you the correlation of that now. Because Plato's teachings come from Atlantis and represent the continuity in ancient Greece of Atlantean ideas, distilled down to the level of consciousness they had at that time. So Plato's concept of the philosopher king parallels the path of the priest and scientist on Atlantis. Jesus himself could be said to have been a, quote, philosopher king when he was an emperor on Atlantis. Frederick Copleston summarizes Plato's teachings as given in the Republic. In answer to the objection that no city can, in practice, be organized according to the plans proposed, Socrates replies that it is not to be expected that an ideal should be realized in practice with perfect accuracy. And that is how things stood when Plato and Socrates lived. But in the Golden Age of Atlantis, we know that the ideal was put in practice. And that is why we are all reaching for the Golden Age again, because we know it was possible. We either experienced it ourselves by being there when Jesus was, which you can understand why we should have such a profound love and commitment to our Lord and Savior, which goes so far back beyond his recent Galilean mission. So, the sense of Golden Ages comes to us by having visited the octaves, the etheric octaves, where they are in process in the golden cities of light, and also having lived in them. And therefore we contain the matrix. And so many people upon earth do today contain the matrix of the ideal society. And I think that this is why we are practical idealists. This is why we do not give up. This is why we keep on moving toward that goal. Because we know it is the goal. We know that it has been realized before, that perhaps we've been a part of it, but indeed we have that confirmation very often as we take our trips nightly out of our bodies to the retreats and the temples. So Socrates asks, what is the smallest change that would enable a state to assume this form of constitution? And he proceeds to mention one which is neither small nor easy, namely the vesting of power in the hands of the philosopher king. The democratic principle of government is, according to Plato, absurd. The ruler must govern in virtue of knowledge, and that knowledge must be knowledge of the truth. That was the same idea of Atlantis, where the rule of the people en masse was not seen, but the rule of those who were educated and learned. The man who has knowledge of the truth is the genuine philosopher. Plato drives home his point by the simile of the ship, its captain and crew. We are asked to imagine a ship in which there is a captain who is taller and stronger than anyone else in the ship. But he is a little deaf is short-sighted, and his knowledge of navigation is not much better. The crew mutiny, take charge of the ship, and drinking and feasting they continue their voyage with such success as might be expected of them. They have, however, no idea of the pilot's art or of what a true pilot should be. Thus Plato's objection to democracy of the Athenian type is that the politicians really do not know their business at all, and that when the fancy takes the people, they get rid of the politicians in office and carry on as though no special knowledge were required for the right guidance of the ship of state. For this ill-informed and happy-go-lucky way of conducting the state, he proposes to substitute rule by the philosopher king, by the man who has real knowledge of the course that the ship of state should take, and can help it to weather the storms and surmount the difficulties that it encounters on the voyage. The philosopher will be the finest fruit of the education provided by the state. He and he alone can, as it were, draw the outline of the concrete sketch of the ideal state and fill up that outline. Those who are chosen out as candidates or possible rulers will be educated not only in musical harmony and gymnastics, but also in mathematics and astronomy. They will not, however, be trained in mathematics merely with a view to enabling them to perform the calculations that everyone ought to learn to perform, but rather with a view to enabling them to apprehend intelligible objects, not in the spirit of merchants or traders with a view to buying or selling, nor only for the sake of the military use involved, but primarily that they may pass from becoming to truth and being, that they may be drawn towards truth and acquire the spirit of philosophy. The state of becoming to that point of the realization of truth, we always equate the word truth with Christ and the word being with the I am presence. The Greeks saw geometry, they saw mathematics as the means of transition to a higher plane, a higher world, from physics to metaphysics. And so this is what their philosopher king should be doing with his mathematics. Atlanteans attempted to secure that their leader would make decisions based upon a spiritual initiation and attainment. And indeed, the Rai Wallen, who was the emperor at the time of our story, was a man who was an inner adept, and as we will read, he was counted among those who are called sons of the solitude. And it is the ancient brotherhood. This term reminds me of what Mark spoke of, the true initiates of the Great White Brotherhood, who are called and call themselves the lonely ones. And I think that those who are on the path recognize that one can feel alone midst a crowd when there is no one present who has perception beyond the level of the human soul, has not passed into the perception of the Christ. And these levels of development are also outlined by Philos in the book. He speaks of humanity and mankind at large having nothing more than the animal soul, most of them. And then the very few beyond that, by comparison, they may be in the millions, but they are still the few, who have an awareness and who live by the human soul. And then beyond that, in higher planes. And so if you attempt to think about what is an animal soul, you can think of people who are not spiritually inclined, usually no part of any religion, have no interest in it, are very much taken up with everything outer. They're very physical and physically conscious. They're conscious physically, they experience physically, and what they don't experience physically has little meaning to them. And when you begin to speak to them of the very simplest of truths, even those written in Scripture, and give them an interpretation of these, they begin to get a dull look in their eyes, whereby you know that they are absolutely incapable of even understanding what you could possibly be talking about. I never looked at it this way until I read Philos recently, and then I realized that there is a soul that is a self-awareness of merely being a human being. And then there is the soul that is descended from God, that is within the body and sealed in the seat of the soul chakra, that, dim though it may be, retains an ancient memory and a spiritual thread and a certain sense of life beyond, and that they are a part of a larger scheme. And it is indeed strange to find people who have none of this, absolutely none of it at all. And I've seen this in very educated, successful people, people in government, politicians, people of all professions. If they like the church and happen to work for us in some capacity, and you begin to give them just a simple concept of your teaching because they ask you, the most intelligent people get this look. And it's very sad to me, very sad. I mean, my heart gets so sad when I have this experience, and because they're good people. They work for the good of society, they champion good causes, they're sacrificial in their time that they give for those causes, and they have a whole lot going for them. And I just wonder, well, where have you been? How could you have developed so far and yet not passed beyond this level of awareness or non-awareness, as the case may be? And so, sons of the solitude are those who have reached levels of attainment, of true adeptship, and the people of Atlantis elected their emperors. They knew, of course, that candidates were only those who came from the highest university and the highest training, but they were well capable of discerning who were the adepts, who were the real spiritual greats of their time, at least at the time and period of this story. That began to dim until it was totally lost by the time the flood came. So we can see that it is possible to have an emperor who has spiritual attainment, and without that spiritual attainment in our leadership, we are simply at the mercy of the inclinations of whoever may be in power. And I feel that Plato's description of those who rule are what this country has come to. And I would like to point out to you that Saint Germain's high hope in the success of our Constitution and our democracy in a republic where we have representative government and the people are intended to elect those leaders who have the ability to govern. It's very much like Atlantis and Atlantis Revisited, which is why Philos does say that the American Republic is Atlantis come again. Saint Germain placed a tremendous stock and trust in education. And at the time that this nation was founded, there was an excellent educational system. And people had good educations, and they were not subject to the educational mill, the manipulation of our children that has gone on in this century and was creeping and crawling and more so in the last century. So without education and the lowering of standards in education, without true and correct education, there are not being raised up today those who are truly qualified because they are in their holy Christ self, which ought to be a basic requirement for leadership, and who therefore have attunement with the mind of God as well as full training in law, in government, and in all of the needs of our country. One of the goals of Montessori International, which Mark and I had when we founded it in 1972, I believe, was that we should have a school whereby we could train up children to take responsibilities in leadership in all fields, and that to be a leader one must learn to be a follower, of course. And we also desire to train good followers who may or may not become leaders. And it is the standard that we keep in our school and the goal that is ever present in my mind, that children who go forth from here have their attunement with God and have the greatest excellence in academics and in a variety of balanced programs, that they can truly faithfully serve their nation, their county, their city, their club, their organization, or their families in that role of leadership that is truly rooted in the path of initiation. And only thus can we bring America back to the early stages of a golden age. So what Plato is saying now is that all of this will merely be a prelude to dialectic, which is discussion and reasoning by dialogue as a method of intellectual investigation, whereby a man starts on the discovery of absolute being by the light of reason only and without any assistance of the senses, until he attains at last to the absolute good by intellectual vision and therein reaches the limit of the intellectual world. He will thus have ascended all the steps of the line. Now, when one reaches the limits of the intellectual world, one has reached the ceiling of the capacity of the human. And at that point, the giant leap must take place. The piercing of the ceiling, the going beyond to the universal mind of God who is in our Christ self. And to receive that focus and that attunement, we must have in our hearts the developed heart chakra of love, the merciful heart, and have transmuted hardness of heart, which warps our decision-making faculties if we would represent the people. So the only true qualified emperor, philosopher, king is one who must have the merciful heart and deal with compassion toward people whom he understands are yet imperfect, yet in the stages of their karma. Plato does not go any further than this. Whether he thought it or knew it is another matter, but Plato has reincarnated to the present and happens to be a dedicated keeper of the flame today. The chosen rulers of the state, therefore, or rather those who are chosen as candidates for the position of guardians, those who are sound in limb and mind and endowed with virtue, will be gradually put through this course of education. Those who have proved themselves satisfactory by the time they have reached the age of 30, being specially selected for training in dialectic. After 5 years spent in this study, they will be sent down into the den and compelled to hold any military or other office which the young are qualified to hold, in order that they may get the necessary experience of life and show whether, when confronted with various temptations, they will stand firm or flinch. Here we come back to the necessity of the vow to those who, in Plato's context, would be rulers. They must have all of this training and then be able to deal with the very bottom echelons of society, be able to work at that level, be in the military, and see whether they can deal with being a follower as opposed to being a leader, a servant rather than a lord. And that is where the temptations come along, and that is a part of the April 23rd syndrome, because April 23rd karma makes us ideally suited to become the servants of our Christ self rather than to be the Christ, because we are debtors to the Christ. We are debtors to the I Am Presence. Being indebted, therefore, we are like indentured servants. We have to pay off the price that the Christ and the I Am Presence paid for us to be an embodiment, to deal with that karma. And so sometimes we have to come down a few notches. We have to bite the bullet. We have to be in positions for which we have far greater professional qualifications and experience. And we are there for chilaship, for karma's sake, and to prove that when we are elevated to a position of responsibility, we will not lord it over those under us, but we will remember how it feels to be at the bottom of the totem pole, and we will have done so ourselves, and therefore prove that we know the meaning of the statement, the servant is not greater than his Lord. So even if you were to become emperor of Atlantis, you would still be the servant of your Lord, your holy Christ self, and the Lord of heaven. So Plato saw this as very important, that one who is to receive great responsibility should be tried, should be given the options of temptation and the option to break the vow, to break that decision that is made. So there comes a time on the path, and it may be well on in years, 5, 10, 15, 20 years after you have been on the path, that the law requires that you are given full opportunity to make any free will choice, to respond to anything in the world, and at the same time your karma accelerates because the metal must be tested and the gold must be refined. And so when it is seen how we perform in the worst of circumstances, then it can be sure that we will perform well in the best of circumstances. After 15 years of such probation, which Plato calls down into the den, those who have distinguished themselves, they will then be 50 years old, will have reached the time at which they must raise the eye of the soul to the universal light which lightens all things, and behold the absolute good. For that is the pattern according to which they are to order the state and lives of individuals, and the remainder of their own lives too, making philosophy their chief pursuit. Now we know that logos, and the Greek word for logos, it means the word, but it also means reason, the divine reason. And so we get a glint of the sense of Plato's piercing through the intellectual levels to this realm, raising the eye of the soul to the universal light which lightens all things. Now that's a quote. And we know that John said of Jesus Christ, that was the true light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. The absolute good, the pattern according to which they are to order the state. So Plato is intimating here that the things which are seen should be patterned after the patterns made in the heavens which are not seen. Plato then has the idea that there is an inner matrix, an inner design, and by passing beyond this level to that light, one can meditate upon that design and use it and apply it to the patterning, to the architecture of society, government, and above all, what is most critical in a leader is right decision-making. Decision-making. That is the whole test of leadership, and that is the whole training of leadership. And as far as I'm concerned, 50 years old is certainly not too soon, nor is it too late to be called into such a responsible position, because it takes much, much training. And knowing that I have been on a path of training so many years of my life, I can see the nuances of lessons and teachings that I have been given, literally millions of precepts and examples and experiences with the Brotherhood that have enabled me to make accurate decisions by the grace of God that must be made. Right decision-making is the goal of this course. Our whole study of Summit University this summer, getting through to the end, is to be in a situation to be able to look at the options, look at the course. If one takes this path, this, which one of these highways do I take, and where will I be 40, 50, 60 years from now if I take each one of these? Being able to see by past experience, you are always relating to every new decision all that you have learned from every right and wrong decision and from all past embodiments. But we need above all the discriminating intelligence of the Christ mind and the threefold flame of the Christ for right decision. But until and unless we can judge righteous judgment, given all circumstances, given our karmic levels, etc., given our options, we can see that it is very possible to fail in life, and it rests upon right decision. So this training is very important, and thus Plato had the right idea. But when their turn comes, toiling also at politics and ruling for the public good, not as if they were doing some great thing, but of necessity, and when they have brought up others like themselves and left them in their place to be governors of the state, then they will depart to the islands of the blessed and dwell there. And the city will give them public memorials and sacrifices and honor them, if the Pythian oracle consent, as demigods, and at any rate as blessed and divine. So you can see that Plato's conclusion was that his course of study would bring these individuals to the place of being unascended adepts or unascended masters. And when they passed on, they would reach the level of the immortals. So there is much that is not written down by Plato of what he has gleaned from Socrates. As you know, Socrates never wrote a thing, so Plato wrote for him as his student. And we can only intuit and wonder and presume that at some level of Socrates' being, he had that memory of the goal of life, and that the role of the sons of the solitude is to serve, and their motto is, I serve, ich dien, which is also in the book. And the highest service is to assist in God government, which Moria teaches us when we do so, we are God's overmen. That's the meaning of God government, and also God over men, and as God is over men, he assigns his overmen to rule in his stead on earth as just stewards. Training in government is important because we must learn to be self-governed. We must learn to be the possessors of our minds and our hearts and to rule with dominion over them. And therefore, let Montessori take up the subject of self-government, paralleling it with the concepts of Plato and others, because self-government is absolutely essential to the victory of the path. Now I would like to go back to the beginning of our story, at the moment just before Zalem reaches the mountain peak. Here he intends to give his profound obeisance to Inkle, the god of the Atlanteans. And so he reflects to himself, are not all Poseidon worshippers of the great god, the one true deity, who is typified by the blazing sun? There can be nothing more sacred and holy. I would like to give you this excerpt now from a dictation by Almoria, which he dictated through me on April 16th, 1976, in which he tells us of his meditations upon the sun as his point of contact with the sun behind the sun. How many eons ago did I become a Chela of the will of God, before I even knew the meaning of the word Chela, or of the concept of the Guru? But God to me was the golden light of the dawn. And I sensed in the first rays of the dawn the will of a cosmic purpose, the will of a life and of a creator beyond myself. And for a number of incarnations, the focal point of my observation of the deity was the morning light of the sun. And by, through that contact, unbeknownst to me, with Helios and Vesta, there was established an arc of flow over the arc of my own attention. And I began to feel the response of my own God flame within to the God of very gods in that sun behind the sun. The observation of this attunement with life continued for several more embodiments until I was not able to even begin the day of my life without this contact and this flow of energy. A literal infusion of my consciousness with ideas, with the understanding of the work that I should do. Almost as it were at subconscious levels, I would move into and out of the sun as my point of contact. Our joy at the first rays of the dawn, we must understand. Our soul leaps at the great symbol in the heavens of the sun behind the sun, and of the Father, Mother, Helios, and Vesta, who maintain the light and the energy of our solar system. The sun is a symbol to our souls of our mighty I Am presence, which God, Almighty God Himself, has given to us as a reminder of just how tremendous is the power of your individualized, God-free being, the I Am that I am. When you think that your own mighty I Am presence, being a replica of the Father, Mother, God, has vastly more power than the sun of this system or the physical sun center, which we call the great central sun, how can we ever dwell in limitation or doubt or dalliance or postponement of all those things that are upon us? Moment by moment, what we affirm is manifest where we are from our I Am presence. We need to get rid of all the debris and the dross of density of consciousness that makes us believe that there is any hesitation, any pause, any distance between the fiat and the manifestation, between the call and the answer. Now, in this relative world, there's a heap of karma and human consciousness and human creation between ourselves and our mighty I Am presence, and that is why we seem not to experience the piercing ray of light instantly in answer to our call. So we have to leave that plane of relativity and hold an absolute immaculate concept of what is the absolute. If you want to ask me what is the immaculate concept, it is the perfect geometry or the perfect divine pattern of anything. A leaf, a tree, yourself, an organ in your body, the planet. You hold that geometric conception in your heart of the call being answered instantaneously. You have faith it is so because you know the law of God's geometry. And so you accept it done, and because you accept it done, it is done. And what the call results in is that there is a continual transmutation and pushing aside and alchemy going on and flushing out of those obstacles to the actual manifestation of your call. So it's very important to have the strong will, the strong mind, the strong heart, the strong faith, the strong knowledge, the strong sense of the mathematics of the light of God, the call being made and the answer manifest. And for this purpose, it's very important to take short mantras and enter them with that intensity of fire. For instance, light, manifest, light, manifest, light, manifest. What I am doing when I am giving this is using the Fohatic key of my voice, or shall I say the key of my voice, to release the Fohat. I am seeing it, I am knowing it, I am giving the fiat, I am sending tremendous love to this light. I am absolutely in love with the light, and I have no other love. The light knows this. I give my life and my body to the light, and I know this light is manifest when I make that fiat. And if there be the delay in the physical body, I know what is happening in the physical body is that the light is manifesting and moving that body toward a greater and greater receptivity and ability to carry the light. So the light is performing the work that is necessary for the fulfillment of the fiat that I'm making. If the light knows it cannot fully manifest in a given cell because that cell has to be emptied so it can be filled, the light will begin the process of emptying the cell, because remember, light is self-luminous, intelligent substance. Light is God. Light is Incal. Light, therefore, knows how to fulfill the command. It is not electricity. It is light with a capital L. Self-luminous, intelligent substance. So when you say, I am the resurrection and the life, you visualize the resurrection flame descending and you accept it. You don't have a sense, well, this is the resurrection flame over here, I'm down here, and I'm not ready to be resurrected. You're not having your thoughts wander everywhere. A divine decree is a sacred experience. Let not our repetition of decrees make them mundane. Every time you give a decree in the name of God, the universe quivers, and your being changes, unless you have no cup of consciousness, no desire, no will, no vow, no decision made. In other words, you might as well be a blob. But when you have these things that I'm explaining to you in line and in order, you have searched your soul, you have atoned for your sins, you sin no more, you try with all of your heart every day to do what is right, you may make mistakes, but your whole bent of your life stream is toward doing the best you know how to do the will of God. When you come and you offer a divine decree in such profound love, in such closeness to God, I cannot even tell you how powerful that decree is. And it is what you put into the divine decree that makes all the difference. El Moria's description of his love of the light and the golden light of the dawn and how this grew in him came because of absolute devotion, absolute love, absolute concentration. I think that if there could be anything said of a common shortcoming of Chilas in the West, is their inability to concentrate, focus, and intensify thought and feeling in God, but rather to be able to say the words, say them quickly, but not to sense that they have to enter into the decree, become the decree, the decreer, and the manifestation, truly enter into God and into His Word and His work. I tell you, you can be transformed overnight if you can glean from what I'm telling you the formula for the calling forth of light and having the victory of that light instantaneously. Because nothing that I am saying can actually transmit the knowledge that I have. I can only speak around it. And as I speak around it, you in your heart come to that moment of quickening and awakening as to the fullness of what I am saying. I pray that you will, because you can be transformed in the twinkling of an eye, and give to El Moria and the Nello and the Brotherhood so much, much more as we would love to do, and ourselves have many fewer problems to deal with that we deal with personally and organizationally. When we think of El Moria, we think of Lanello, and we see the same thread of adoration to the sun in his embodiments. 33 centuries ago, as the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten, he established a religion based on the worship of the one God. This God, known as Aton, was represented in the symbol of a disk, a sun disk, or an orb with diverging rays, each of which ended in a hand, bestowing blessings upon all life. Because Lanello had been a priest on Atlantis, even a high priest in the temple, The Word was within him. It was therefore the transition from Atlantis to Egypt. And when he was embodied at Akhenaten, his life centered around Aton. Monotheism is attributed to Akhenaten and later to Moses, who studied in the Egyptian schools. But of course it comes from ancient Atlantis and its great golden ages, when people knew of the great central sun and the sun behind the sun, when they knew of the I Am Presence. Akhenaten had a passion for worshiping the sun. Not long after he assumed the throne, he prohibited the temple worship of the official gods of the land and ordered that their figures and names be erased from the monuments. The gods of Egypt at that time were the Nephilim gods, fallen angels, those who had come in their spacecraft to Earth, and those whom they taught the creatures of their genetic engineering to worship. Mechanization man have always worshipped the Nephilim gods. So the black priests were affiliated with the Nephilim, and they had their dark altars and their dark shrines to the Nephilim. You can imagine that all hell broke loose when out comes Akhenaten to totally cast them out and establish the true religion of the true God. Aton then was the sole God. Akhenaten believed that everything that lived had its being through the sun's rays, and that he himself was the son of Aton, the son of the sun, sons of the solitude, sons of the one. Akhenaten saw Aton as light, whose beams were beauteous with love as they fell upon his people and city. He taught that Aton was compassionate, merciful, gentle, tender, and knew not anger. Above all, Aton loved truth. Akhenaten urged his people to worship in truth without excess ceremony. There were no elaborate rituals or prostrations before idols. Aton had no images but was represented only in the sun disk. Akhenaten was careful to point out that the sun disk itself was not God, but only a symbol of God. Just as Zalem points out in the first chapter, that the sun is the symbol of God. Aton was not worshipped in the dark, hidden sanctuaries of the former gods, but in the new, open, sunlit temples. Akhenaten personally assumed the role of high priest of Aton and composed beautiful hymns to the sun, expressing gratitude for the blessings of life. The most well-known of these hymns praises Aton for his blessings not only upon the Egyptians, but upon all distant foreign countries, all men, cattle, and wild beasts. In a lecture which Mark gave on October 13th, 1968, he said, "Much of what Akhenaten wrote in his hymns to the sun was based on the old Lemurian cultures and the knowledge of the ancient Atlantean priesthood. So in a way, there is nothing new under the sun, but it is the unique ritual of rediscovering for ourselves that which has been and that which one day will be, as the return of the glory to the past in an ever-transcendent upsweep takes place." So he went from being high priest in the temple of Atlantis to high priest in Egypt, and the outcome of this reformer was death. Both Akhenaten and Nefertiti, as you know, were murdered by the black priests of Amun. But monotheism and the one God and the great light thereof can never be extinguished. Neither can our souls, neither can we. And I take it as very interesting that we have reached 33 cycles since that time. And the 33rd century since that time that we are in is the time of the fulfillment of Akhenaten. He could not be forever silenced, and so the teaching of the I Am that I Am and the mighty I Am presence, the rays of the sun going forth, each one of us a ray in manifestation. The ray becomes the crystal cord, out from the light of the Absolute comes the expression of that light who is the Christ, the mediator, and finally the manifestation of the individual soul. So we are the hand of God in action, and that is what El Morya dictated to Lanello to mark in the Heart, Head, and Hand decrees. I am the hand of God in action, gaining victory every day. My pure soul's great satisfaction is to walk the middle way. And the middle way is the middle way of the sun taught by Gautama Buddha. The decrees in the decree book that are, many of them that are in rhyme and some others that are not, were all written down by Mark Prophet. And when I would ask him to write decrees for me to this and that master, he would do so. He would do so quickly. He would take out a pen and he would write them as fast as he could write them. As fast as the pen would go, they would come through. He would even do this while driving our mobile unit that we used to take across the country. And as I think upon it now, and I think upon him who he says his assignment was to give chanting in the temple, I realize that the decrees that are in our decree book are not anything new under the sun, but they are the very decrees that he gave and the chants he gave, translated for our use and our time today. They are also translated for the new dispensations of the violet flame and so forth. They are given on the 7 rays of the sun, the 7 rays of the light. And I tell you, when you look at them and you look at how they fit together in the matrix and their rhythm, and how they can be chanted, prayed, decreed, sung, they are a miracle of a gift from God, from his causal body, which I know any number of the masters use to write them, because you will note it will say that various decrees are by various masters. And I believe that those of us who have heard decreeing for the first time and immediately picked up the science of the spoken word and began to decree even when we didn't hear decrees, are a part of those who have that memory of Lemuria and Atlantis when the science of the spoken word was at such a height. When you realize what we have been given does not contain some of the formulas which were necessary to float stones or do all kinds of things, you can see that there is a science beyond the science of the spoken word, which perhaps future keepers of the flame in more advanced ages and golden ages will be given, because the people of a planet can be trusted with such formulas, or perhaps the priesthood can be trusted. The dispensation of this activity is that what we do is public. Our publications reach the world, and they reach many minds and many people who are not so refined or not so pure in their motives, who can still easily use the teachings to their own devices or to work harm upon others, and I've seen them do so. So that is why, as vast as the teaching is, it is still limited to a certain evolution and life wave. We have not found it possible in this activity to ever give a mystery teaching that would be secret to a group, because there is no control over the groups or over whoever might be sent to simply be there as a listener and an observer. And beyond that, until an individual has reached certain secured levels as an initiate, one never knows when the mysteries entrusted will later be misused, because that individual comes to a place in the future that he takes the left-handed path. So this is why I tell you, and this is why you heard listening angels say last evening, that love is the key to the powers and the cities. Because when you have developed such a tremendous love in your heart, and Christ is in your heart as that love, and you so intensify in your heart, then the universe cannot resist to give you powers, because when you have that true divine love, your heart chakra will be balanced, and you will not misuse the powers. So the attainment of love enables us to deal with the limitations that are otherwise present in the public forum for those who would be initiates on the path. Concerning the call, I would like to read you a few brief quotes. First of all, from The Science of the Spoken Word, which is on page 84. If in the daily exercise of free will and in the course of taking dominion over the earth, you desire the assistance of the Most High, you must command him to descend into your world, into your life, in the same manner as Jesus taught his disciples to pray in the imperative, saying, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven." By consciously, willingly uniting your forces with God's, making your will one with and subject to the divine, and then commanding the Almighty to enter your world and to exercise his dominion, you return to him the authority that he gave to you. In this manner the soul is infilled and infired with the Spirit of God, and you become the supreme manifestation of God's authority, his will, and his dominion on earth. The ritual of asking that you might receive, of seeking that you might find, of knocking that the door might be opened, is the key to self-mastery through conscious cooperation with God. If you would conquer the synthetic image in self and society, you must replace the relics of its sinful sense of subservience to an angry, vengeful God with the scientific understanding of the cosmic law that states, "The call compels the answer." The real God has challenged man to prove his law in his daily life. "Prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that there shall not be room enough to receive it." I challenge you to prove God all the days of your life. Don't go to him with a half-baked, uncommitted consciousness, division of your members, divided attention, bad habits, bad food, and all the rest of it, and then say, "See, I proved God, and he didn't show. He didn't manifest. He didn't give me what I asked for." This is the work of the workers of iniquity. So let us know that if we are in our right place, we can prove the tremendous power of God daily. From Corona Class Lessons, page 30. We are the freedom for this earth, but the only way we can help you win your freedom is for you to invite us to do so. The stronger and more persistent the invitation, the greater the response we can give. For by cosmic law, the wave of your energy must at least be equaled by our response, and the call compels the answer. Now you learn a lesson here. It is the quality of the call that determines the answer. It is the vibration of the wave of your energy that determines the minimum that God will send back to you. So if it's a meager, half-hearted, little plaintive plea full of self-pity, what do you think you're going to get back from the Almighty? You are the Omega, he is the Alpha. You must be in perfect polarity to him, and he will give you what you desire. Zalum's call was at least fervent enough to result in his receiving what he asked for, the means to support himself and his mother in Kaiful during the 7-year period of his education. That's what he asked for. He didn't ask for anything more. He didn't get anything more at the moment, but good things did come to him. When he makes this find, he says, Zalum says, "Often had I been over the spot where a chance blow of my staff revealed the golden treasure, yet never found the precious store until I had asked Inkle for it, urged by the pressing burden of my necessities." Necessity is the mother of invention, and when all else fails, we do cry out with such fervor. I think that we have all seen that many times the answer that God had for us was there all the while, but we didn't see it until we asked. There's a further lesson to be gleaned from Zalum's call. and the answer forthcoming from Inkel his god, who revealed to him the gold in the mountain. By discovering the gold, Zalem received the money he needed to pursue his education. But God also set up the circumstances of Zalem's life, whereby his metal, the gold of his character, would be tested, and his soul would eventually learn the lessons it needed to learn, as we will see as the story progresses. So when we ask God for something and he gives us something, we have to remember the rule. God has a right to test us. He may give the gift, but he may also give a test with it. And Zalem was tested during the remainder of his life. He passed some tests, he failed some tests. What is important to know is that God will test us. We have a right to be tested. He has a right to test us. So God, once having opened himself to us in answer to our call, then enters our life because he has expended something of himself on our behalf. And he wants to see that we will understand that and rise to the occasion of giving in kind. It works both ways. With what measure God answers us, we must meet him at least equal and give back to him that equal and more. Don't the parables of Jesus tell us that when God gives an amount to us, he expects it returned with interest, and how he punishes the one who went and buried his portion in the earth in a napkin? The Ascended Masters teach that God always answers prayer, but that the answer may not always be what we expect. The Apostle told us that we ask and receive not because we ask amiss, and we spend God's light on our lusts, on our desires, on the things of the flesh. And so you can see when prayer is not answered, and how some people become angry or discouraged. It is merely because motive is the channel. If the motive be pure, you have provided God a channel to answer your request. God responds by helping us learn the lessons we need most to make progress on the path. He responds to the desires of our hearts, and the desires of our souls, and the desires in the desire body. Some of these are pure, some of these are impure. I would like you to listen to an excerpt from Listening Angel's dictation of October 5th of this past year, concerning the fact that our desires are our prayer. This is what she had to say. Thus our angels attend every life stream upon earth. We serve, of course, in this capacity, the keeper of the scrolls. For as we listen, we also transmit to the mighty I Am Presence, to the Father, Mother, God. Our transmittals become the source for the scribes, the angels of the keeper of the scrolls, who must keep the record in the book of life. Therefore, it is not only your prayers, your questions, your burdens, and your problems that we listen to and attempt to be the instrument also of some healing, some understanding, as God does send it through us and through the various angels of the seven rays. But we must also listen, beloved, not to the words that you speak, but to the vibrations of desires. For desire is a prayer, beloved. The desire of the heart, may it be pure. The desire of the soul and the mind, may it be for goals sublime. But where the records send forth yet the frequencies of old desires, perhaps forgotten, yet not discarded, these also are written down. And so you will discover that when God answers prayer, he must answer all of the communications, and not merely those that you choose to consciously direct to Him. When you ask for gifts that you think you ought to have, even spiritual gifts, God responds by helping you in the greatest area of need. Needs you may not know that you have, but God knows. Therefore, He sends into your life conditions and experiences by many angels, whereby the lesser desires may be tasted, tried, put on, experienced, until they are no longer sweet, but become bitter, and thus you let go of the desire. Remember, beloved, that in letting go of your wants, you must take the final and permanent act of discarding them, exorcising them in the name of God, calling for deliverance from the momentum that is not easy to get rid of, or those who ride piggyback out of the astral plane, or well-meaning friends who continue to feed those desires when you have decided you are through and through with them altogether. Satisfying a few of these, only that you may see the dead end and the futility, is God's way of liberating you. This may take you into certain byways in life, but it is guaranteed that you will not take the same byways again. Thus God has His methods by karmic law to wean you from lesser states of consciousness and to place before you such magnificent examples, such vision that you are swift to fly to higher spheres and altitudes. Simply put, your desires will attract to you their fulfillment. We have said that many times, and I've touched on it already yesterday. Our desires speak loudly, and a part of ourself demands their fulfillment more than those things that we think we ought to desire that are our spoken desires. This is why we pursue psychology, the study of the books listed in the last Keepers of the Flame lesson, and the attempt at the resolution of the lower self so that we can come to the place where we don't desire the lesser things that tie up our energy. Continuing with the dweller, I'd like to quote for you from the book Atlantis, the Eighth Continent, by Charles Berlitz, who is an eminent linguist and author of the Bermuda Triangle. This is what he writes of Atlantis, and you can read in your books, starting with chapter 2 and extending through chapter 4, myriad descriptions of Atlantis. The descriptions of Atlantis in the book are the very things that Mark was talking about in his lecture that enabled him to tune in to his past experiences there. So I know you will all want to read this. So from Charles Berlitz, this is what he has to say. For the past 2,500 years, a percentage of the world's people have believed that there once existed in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, roughly between Spain, Africa, and the Americas, an island continent now sunk below the ocean. On this great island lived a civilized and ambitious population. There were great cities, splendid palaces, golden-roofed temples, an intricate canal system that provided irrigation for the fertile fields, and crowded harbors from which trading fleets and armies carried its commerce and culture to islands in other parts of the ocean, and the shores of Europe, America, and the Mediterranean basin and beyond. As this civilization reached its apogee, it suddenly ended in flood, earthquake, and the flames of volcanic explosions. It vanished from history and is remembered only by legends told and retold through successive generations by the descendants of those who escaped the disaster. The name of this island empire was Atlantis. Plato, who wrote the most detailed surviving description of Atlantis that has come down from antiquity, was insistent in locating Atlantis not in the Mediterranean but far out in the Atlantic, beyond the Pillars of Hercules. This is Gibraltar on the southern coast of Spain and Mount Atlas on the northern shore of Africa. Those are the Pillars of Hercules. Plato specified that the island was larger than Libya and Asia put together, and was the way to other islands, and from these islands you might pass through the whole of the opposite continent which surrounds the true ocean. For this sea, the Mediterranean, which is within the Straits of Hercules, is only a harbor, having a narrow entrance, the Straits of Gibraltar, but that other is a real sea, and the surrounding land may be most truly called a continent. We owe the name Atlantis to the Greco-Roman world, whose writers were familiar with the idea and location of the lost continent. The tribes of northwestern Africa near the Atlantic coast were even referred to by ancient writers as Atlantes or Atarantes, and Atlantioi by classical writers as remnants of Atlantean colonists or colonial populations. The Berber tribes of North Africa retain their own legends of Attala, a warlike kingdom off the Africa coast, with rich mines of gold, silver, and tin, which sent not only these metals but conquering armies to Africa. Attala is now under the ocean, but according to prophecy will one day reappear. The ancient Gauls, as well as the Irish, Welsh, and British Celts, believed that their ancestors came from a continent that sank into the Western Sea, the latter two naming this lost paradise Avalon. You remember that is where they, at least the poet wrote that Arthur was returning to when he died, to Avalon. The Basques, a racial and linguistic island in southwestern France and northern Spain, believe they are the descendants of Atlantis, which they call Atlantica. It is current belief among the Portuguese that Atlantis, Atlantida, once existed near Portugal, and that parts of it, the Azores Islands, are still pushing up their peaks from under the sea. The Iberian peoples of southern Spain trace a direct kinship to Atlantis and are increasingly aware that Spain still owns what may have been a part of the Atlantean Empire, the Canary Islands. Here, curiously, the name Atalia is still current as a place name, and the original inhabitants, when discovered, claimed to be the only survivors of a worldwide disaster. The Vikings believed that Atli was a wondrous land in the west, and it was there also that the Teutonic races placed Valhalla, a mystic land of self-renewing fighting, drinking, and feasting. Phoenician and Carthaginian seafarers were reportedly familiar with the thriving western island that they called Antilla, but tended to keep secret their knowledge for reasons of commerce and colonization. There are surprising references in the ancient classics of India, the Puranas, the Mahabharata, to Attala, the White Island, a continent located in the Western Ocean, half a world away from India. The approximate location given to Attala in the Western Ocean, when converted according to ancient Hindu divisions of the world, was, according to latitude, on a horizontal line running through the Canary Islands and the Bahamas. This line also passes through the site of the legendary Atlantis. Berlitz continues. In these same and other texts, the word Atlantica is used in relation to a final catastrophic destruction. When the Spanish conquerors of Central and South America reached Mexico, they learned that the Aztecs believed they originally came from Aztlan, an island in what was to them the Eastern Ocean. The word Aztec may be derived from Aztlan, a concept that the Spaniards were prepared to accept, since many of them believed that the inhabitants of the New World might be descendants of Atlantis, and for this very reason were logical candidates for the rule of Spain through ancient Spain's former close Atlantean connection. Indian tribes of North America also remember traditions that their ancestors came from an island in the Atlantic, often giving it a name resembling Atlantis. Early explorers in Wisconsin found a fortified village near Lake Michigan, which its inhabitants called Aztlan. All of these similar names for an island, continent, or lost homeland do not constitute a determining proof that it once existed. They do, however, strongly indicate that Atlantis was not a literary device of Plato. These legends are of great antiquity and come from widely separated parts of the world that were not in communication with one another within the time we count as history. According to the calculations of archaeologist James Churchward, Atlantis sank in cataclysm in what we call the Flood of Noah, approximately 11,600 years ago. At one point in the book on Philos, it is stated that the Flood of Noah was a previous cataclysm that took place on Atlantis and not the last that caused its sinking. I have checked this, and Almoria says that is one of the minor errors in the book, that the final sinking of Atlantis was the Flood of Noah, the Noachian deluge, and it was Noah himself who built the ark and so forth. In addition to Plato's account, Atlantis was described by Edgar Cayce in his readings, was recalled in scenes from Taylor Caldwell's romance of Atlantis, and was explored by Captain Nemo in Jules Verne's famous classic 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Caldwell's romance of Atlantis was written when she was a child, and it has accuracy in it concerning Atlantis. She read from the Akashic records for her books, which is why I have given my children, when they were smaller, her books to read as a study in writing and a study in someone who was reading the Akashic records. Now we come to Chapter 2, and as I mentioned, Chapters 2 to 4 give extensive descriptions of the country. I will read to you from these, but you will have to read them in their entirety for yourself and pursue your own meditations on them as you desire to explore your personal past. Page 45 of the paperback. Poseid was no longer known in the earth when history's first pages were chronicled by the earliest historian using papyrus, nay, nor even yet earlier, when the sculptors of the obelisks of Egypt and the rock inscribers of the temples cut pictorial histories in enduring granite. No longer known was Poseid, for it is today approaching 9,000 years since the waters of the ocean engulfed our fair land and left no sign, not even so much as was left of those two cities hidden away beneath lava and ashes, and for 16 centuries of the Christian era thought never to have existed. Excavators dug away the scoriae from Pompeii, but from Kai-Ful no man can turn aside the floods of the Atlantic and reveal what no more exists. For were every day a century, it were even so nearly 3 months of such lengthy days, since the dread fiat of God went forth unto the waters, cover the land, so that the all-beholding sun shall see it no more in all his course. And it was so. Page 47. Now the chapters 2 to 4 describe the ministerial and monarchical palaces in Kai-Ful, the capital city, the landscape, the buildings of Kai-Ful, and Atlantean technology and government. We drew our electrical energies partly from the waves beating the ocean shores, more largely from the rise and fall of the tides, from mountain torrents and from chemicals, but chiefly from what might aptly be termed the night side of nature. High-grade explosives were known to us, but our employment of them was of much wider range than thine. If thou couldst cause these substances to gradually yield up their vast imprisoned force without fear of an explosion, thinkest thou that thy machinery would long be propelled by clumsy, because ponderous, steam or electric engines? If a great steamship could dispense with its coal bins and boilers and instead have dynamite in an absolutely safe compound form yielding from what a man could carry in a handbag force sufficient to drive the ship from England to America, or to send a train 6,000 miles, how long wouldst thou see steam engineering? Yet this was a power, and a least valued one at that, which we, possibly you, certainly I, knew in the Atlantean life. It will be again with thee, because our race is coming again from Devakin to earth. Devakin is a place which is greatly described in the book, where the soul goes to fulfill its wishes, fulfill its concept of life, and prepare for the next embodiment. Depending on how high-minded the soul is and how advanced his desires for service or activity might be, Devakin could take place anywhere from the astral plane to the lower etheric. We'll take that up when we get to it. I'm reading from this chapter now, page 51. The government pursued the paternalistic principle so systematically as to have vested in itself the ownership of all the land, all methods of public transit and communication, all manufactories, in a word, all property. The system was a most beneficent one, which no Poseid wanted to see disused or supplemented by any other. No political harmony exists in this modern time of the world like that which sprung from this paternalism on the part of our elected officials. Governmental paternalism is a thing regarded with jealousy and semi-alarm by modern republics, but it is today a different quality from what it was then. Ours was a paternalism closely watched and duly checked by the suffragists of the nation, and its life was essentially exponent of true socialistic principles. I think what is trying to be said here of the true principles of a community based on the sharing of what is there. The broad principle of equity between employer and employee governed in Poseid. It mattered not what a person did for another person, but the whole equation hinged on this question: was some service performed by one person for another? If so, the fact that the service was or was not accomplished by physical labor counted for nothing. It might be equally a service deserving compensation, whether it was a physical or a purely intellectual service. I'm on page 58 now. On every side of me when I came from my mountain home to my metropolitan abode, I found inexplicable wonders, but natural dignity saved me from appearing ignorant. Little by little was I to acquire familiarity with my environment, and thereby gain a knowledge of the things which have been referred to since I first mentioned the exchange of country life for urban surroundings. As you know, he comes down the mountain and he moves to Kai Fu with his mother. But these attainments of pleasing authority over nature demanded a special course. That course of study had not yet been determined upon by me prior to my introduction to the city, for it seemed that the part of wisdom was to concentrate my energies upon specialties and not to scatter force by attempting generalities. To this end, I determined to live for a more or less extended period without seeking admission to the Zioquithlon, the College of Scientists, and resolved to devote the interim to observation. I had been an extensive reader of books which I obtained from the public library in the district where my mountain home had been. From these I had gained no inconsiderable understanding of social polity. The fact that there were but 91 elected offices in the gift of the people, while there were almost 300 millions of Poseidon and Atoll and her colonies, and according to a late census which I had seen, 37, nearly 38 millions of electors held first-degree diplomas, thus entitling them to hold elective offices, disposed me to think it extremely improbable that such a high preferment would ever fall to my lot. But if I could scarcely expect a ministerial office, I yet felt that I might, if I fitted myself therefore by gaining a prime diploma, attain to a high political level and hold an appointive position, and some of these were almost equally as honorable as a counselorship. What special subjects should I concentrate upon? Geological research was very attractive to me, and by its numerous branches offered wide and alluring fields of opportunity. Then again, philology was almost as much so. My ability to acquire foreign languages was not inconsiderable, as I had found from studying a little volume descriptive of a land known as Swearnies, a strange country, and of the language of which many examples were given. These I had without effort learned perfectly from once reading. Several months of city residence at length found me determined to acquire all the geological knowledge that I could, for it was a study which I believed Incal had directed me to make, as also a knowledge of mines and of practical mineralogy. As coefficients, I purposed to thoroughly ground myself in synthetic and analytical literature, not alone of my native Poseid, but also that of Swearni. Swearni is India, and Necropanic languages. Thus have I named the three greatest nations of pre-Noachian, pre-Nephian times. One of these nations was effaced from the earth, but the other two have, after terrible vicissitudes, survived till today. Of them I will speak later. I believe that the necropanic is Egypt. The reasons which induced me to choose the curriculum which I have mentioned were that as a geologist and coordinate scientist I had hoped to make new discoveries of value and to place them in book form before the world, at least before the Poseid peoples, who esteem themselves most of the world, an end scarcely to be attained otherwise than by this course of study. The influence which I hoped to gain through such publications might lead to my becoming Superintendent General of Mines, a political place not second to any other appointive office. There certainly would be other studies required of me if I entered the race for a prime diploma, but the ones cited were the most agreeable and would constitute my chief aspiration. As an aside, I may remark that those studies then selected and afterwards mastered led my nature to assume a bent which resulted not many years ago in my becoming a mine owner in the state of California, and a successful one too. It so much more firmly fixed my linguistic leanings that while a citizen of the United States of America, I was a master not alone of my native tongue, but also of 13 other modern languages, such as French, German, and Spanish, Chinese, several dialectical varieties of Hindustani and Sanskrit as a sort of mental relaxation. Please not to regard this confession as due to boastfulness. It is not. I but make it in order to show thee, my friend, that thine own powers are not matters of heritage only, but recollected acquirements from some one, or it may be all of, thy past lives. Also to give thee a hint of profit, to wit, that studies today undertaken, no matter how near to the evening of thy days, will surely bear fruit, not alone in thy present earth life, but in the experiences of subsequent incarnations. We see with all we have seen, we do with all we have done, and we think with all we have thought. Verbum sat sapienti. A word to the wise is sufficient. This ends chapter 3, and we come to chapter 4. It is a very exciting subject. Before we depart this court, I would like to invite you to give the resurrection decree with me in the manner in which I have described to you of making the call and knowing it is instantaneously manifest. Decree number 60 in your decree book. We will stand in honor of the great source of life, who sends forth to us now the ray of the resurrection, the spirit of the resurrection. When you invoke the light of God, the ray descends to the plane of invocation. We are in the physical octave. If you make contact with the sun, behind the sun, with your I am presence, this ray will come forth instantaneously, and when it reaches the plane of manifestation, which is your heart chakra, the ray, upon hitting the heart chakra, will spring up as the flame of resurrection. Whether or not this happens is due considerably to your own focus, attunement, and profound love and gratitude to God for this ray and flame. We will give the preamble, and then we will give this decree slowly and with power and as a fiat. Remember, your preamble is your connection with the source from whom and whence you are invoking the ray. It is always given with profound devotion. Together. Beloved, mighty, victorious presence of God, I am in me, my very own beloved holy Christ self, and holy Christ selves of all mankind. By and through the magnetic power of the immortal, victorious threefold flame of love, wisdom, and power, anchored within my heart, I am invoking the flame of resurrection from the heart of God in the great central sun, from beloved Alpha and Omega, beloved Jesus the Christ, beloved Mother Mary, beloved Archangel Gabriel and Uriel, the angels of the Resurrection Temple, beloved Lanello, the entire spirit of the Great White Brotherhood and the World Mother, elemental life, fire, air, water, and earth. Together. Beloved flame of resurrection, blaze through me thy light always. Beloved flame resuscitation, make my heart to sing thy praise. O blazing white Christ radiance, of God's own I am fire, expand thy blessed purity, and free me from all wrong desire. Beloved flame of resurrection, rise and rise to love's great height. Blessed flame regeneration, guide all men by thy great light. I am thy chalice free, through whose substance clear all can see the Christ flame lily of eternity appear. Blazing, 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 blazing. Now we will give the mantra, I am the resurrection and the life, 9 times, for you to practice your oneness with God and your acceptance of the instantaneous manifestation of the resurrection flame. Together. I am the resurrection and the life. 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 For the same purpose of the arcing of the light of the sun, as El Moria pursued, for the same purpose of intensifying devotion of the heart, we will sing our song to the central sun, to Helios and Vesta. 585. Use the same technique that you have gleaned from my words for bringing Helios and Vesta and their flame and sun right to your heart. You may make your calls to begin with.